Hello everyone, this is Chidanand from Kratz Infotech NG. Welcome to this tutorial on GitHub Actions. Many organizations which use GitHub Actions have got a requirement wherein at an organization level, any team that is using GitHub Actions may probably have a bunch of workflows which are common across different teams. Jobs like building, compiling, packaging, bundling, deploying, building a Docker image and publishing it to Docker Hub registry. You can think of any number of workflows. Now, either you let different teams manage these workflows, or if at all you follow a DevOps approach, you have a centralized DevOps team which will put out a standardized curated list of GitHub actions. Now, how to make these available at an organization level? That is where starter workflows comes into picture. In this short tutorial, I will demonstrate how to set up something called as a starter workflow, which is an organization level settings, and anyone who's putting up a repository and a workflow at an organization level, these workflows will show up in a templarized way out there. Let me first show you what do I mean by a starter action. Let's say if at all I pick up any of my GitHub repository and go ahead and try to put up a kind of a workflow, new workflow. Okay, you will get a bunch of recommendations or suggestions. Many of these are published by GitHub. Sometimes based upon the source code that you have put in, GitHub makes an educated guess about what kind of a workflow that you would need and gives you all these recommendations. So when you define a starter workflow for your organization, anyone well within your organization, when he's putting up a workflow, they will also show up right here. Now that is what I plan to demonstrate. Okay, this is an organization level setting. So let me go to my repository, or rather let me check how many organizations do I have, and let me create a repository for one of the organization. All right. Repositories. All right, let me go ahead and create a repository. Okay, I have a bunch of organizations. Let me pick up one of these organizations. Okay, Kratz Infotech NG. Okay, now when I want to define a starter workflow, the repository in which the starter workflow is put out is standardized. It has to be something called .github. Okay, so well within my organization, I need to create a repository with the name .github. Okay, I will make it public repository. Let me also put in a README file. Not that I'll put out any content out there. So I create a repository called .github. In this repository, under a certain folder, I will have to create the YAML and a JSON equivalent of this YAML file. Let me take a look at the documentation. I will leave the documentation, the link to the GitHub documentation also, so that it's easy for anyone who's referring to it. Hang on. Okay, creating the starter workflow. Okay, now you'll have to create a repository called .github. Inside that, create a directory called workflow templates. Okay, under this folder, you can create any YAML file of your choice. So let me create under workflow templates, I will create, let's say, my first action.yml file. Okay, so .github workflow templates / my first, whatever name of your workflow that you would want. You can have not just one, a bunch of other workflows. Out here, let me copy and paste a very, very simple workflow. Okay, the name of the workflow, which is Kratz Infotech NG, some starter CI. What is the event on which the workflow will get triggered? A job which will run on Ubuntu latest. It's not doing anything much other than checking out that repository and running just one line of code. All right, commit these changes. All right, let me just go ahead and make these changes. Ideally, all this should happen on the client, but the whole idea is just to demonstrate how to set up this workflow, which is why I'm doing everything in the text editor right here on GitHub. Now my YML definition is present. I will also have to create another JSON file, which also has got some sort of a metadata regarding this action that we have put out. Let me just take a look at what should be the name of this JSON file. So out here, they have given some name .yml, whatever is the workflow name, and then the JSON file should be named exactly with the same name as in the workflow.yml, but without the YML, and you'll have to append .properties.json in the end of it. So my YML is my -first action. So let me just create another file. My first action, that is what is the name of my YML file. Here it has to be properties.json. Okay, properties.json. Okay, and let me just copy and paste a simple YML, a simple JSON file, which has got properties.json, correct. Okay, again, this whole documentation is out here as to what should be the content of the JSON file. Out here is a simple thing: the name, description, what category does your template belong to, and a bunch of other file patterns that you would want to identify. Not that all of them are mandatory, but I'm just keeping it pretty simple out here. All right, so let me go ahead and commit these two stuff. Okay, so there is my first action, which is the workflow name, and there's also a properties.json, which has got the metadata for the action or the starter action that I have defined. Now let me put up an organization level repository and see if this starter workflow gets prompted out there. So let me come here and let me create a repository. Now this repository has to be at an organization level, only then the starter workflows defined for the organization will get prompted. All right, I'll just say test starter workflow, some repository name, and this has to be under the organization. All right, I will make it public, add a readme file. Okay, go to actions. And if you see here, by Kratz Infotech NG, whatever the starter workflow that we have defined comes out here. And if at all I say configure, pretty much you will get the source code of the starter workflow that I put out. As simple as that. I hope you enjoyed this quick tutorial on GitHub Actions, how to set up a starter workflow at an organization level. Thank you so much for stopping by and watching. And as usual, I will leave in all the documentation links in the description section. If you run into any issues, kindly leave a message and I'll try to address it as soon as I can. Thank you so much. You have a great day.